Welcome to the AI Show, Auckland's monthly AI event. Ben Reid has spent 2 years researching geopolitical, environmental and emerging technology trends for his new book, Fast Forward Aotearoa. Join us for his talk sharing the trends, insights and challenges we all need to be discussing.
So tonight, of course, we're here with thanks for Ben Reid for being available. Worked out quite nicely, didn't it?
Has done very well, yeah.
Ben and I have worked together for many years. His previous role as the Executive Director for the AI Forum. We co-run AI Day over the days in Waterfront Theatre during 17-18.
Who was there? a few.
They were awesome. They were great events.
Fun.
Lots of different AI companies and organisations were born during those events. So since then, Ben's been doing some phenomenal research, and he's here to share some of those insights and observations from his new book. Please welcome Ben Reid.
Thank you. Great.
I will do the
Kia ora.
technical stuff.
Oh, yeah. We've got the standard joke about being great at AI and no good at AV, so let's see how it comes up. Is that real? Oh, there we go. Cool. Kia ora. So this is fantastic to be here, and I've got to talk to a microphone. So yeah, look. So I've got a bit of a story. So just a little bit about me. Kia ora, ko Ben Reid toka whenua. I these days work as a technology futurist. Is probably how I sort of style myself. There's sort of 16 AI generated versions of me, and I stand generally. That's a tool called profilepicture.ai. I assume a few of you have used it. It's great. You sort of upload 20 photos of yourself and train the model, and it spits out hundreds of pictures of you, and then you realize you've given all your biometric data to a honeypot website on the internet. So for since 2008, I've been running my company Mimia, and this it's evolved a lot along the way, but sort of work at the intersection of strategy and emerging technologies, and probably most known these days for the newsletter I put out every week. You can subscribe down there, mimia.substack.com. So that's basically just scanning across everything that's happening in the global technology set right at the frontier every week, of which everything is AI. And so nearly two years ago, when writing the newsletter, I put this post up, and I'd had a thought that I'd been having some thoughts about I'm scanning this technology and this AI that's coming through all the time, and there's this sort of almost this disconnect between this Aotearoa, New Zealand, the country I'm living in, and what I'm seeing happening in Silicon Valley and China and around the world. And so I thought, well, look, why don't I write a book about it? And rather optimistically, I said, oh yeah, well, I'm just going to do this in 30 Sundays and go. And so I spent Sundays in Tauranga with a fantastic new library in Aotearoa, Christchurch. And optimistically, I thought that I'd do it in 30 Sundays. But 2 years later, so we had the digital release of the book last month in Canterbury, in Tauranga itself, which was fantastic. And then today, we're celebrating the print release, asterisk, shipping at the end of April. So it's with the printers, full color, 600 pages. And what I'm going to do today is just talk you through the main themes of the book, some of the points that I'm making, and then we'll just open up for Q&A. So I'll talk for about 25 minutes, I reckon, which usually means 30, and then we'll see how we get. All right, well, so look, I think Justin sort of introduced me. I just introduced myself, but I did also just want to do a big shout out to Sam Ragnarsson, who is one of the very few Icelandic Kiwis, and we've worked together for over 10 years, since post-earthquake in Christchurch. So Sam is also a futurist, so I was just a futurist, at Rongo, sort of works, he's sort of data wrangler, works across, organizations, working out how to create ways to share data between them. It's one of the things, but he's also extremely creative. And so as I went further in this project, and I was just trying to imagine some of these futures that are envisioned in the book, then Sam just suddenly, has brought the whole thing to life. So just massive credit to him. So all of the AI generated art in the book is thanks to Sam. And there's, that's on the inside cover. That is Mid-Journey Imagining New Zealanders in a Utopian Future Society Enabled by Future Artificial Intelligence, Morning Sun, Clear Sky. And look, part of the book is actually for me I don't think many people have done New Zealand sci-fi fantasy envisioning in the future. And so this is why couldn't New Zealand look like this, right? Why do we have to be sort of farms and everything? Why shouldn't we have a future that looks like that? So that's part of my challenge as part of the book. All right, so what I did right at the very beginning. So the book, as I say, is 600 pages, and it's a marathon read. So it's sort of like a manual in many ways. And so it's something hopefully that people can dip into, find the bits that they like, and ultimately we'll put a chatbot over the top of it, and so you can sort of have a conversation with it. But what I did, anyone obviously knows Balaji Srinivasan. So he's a crypto guy. Used to be CTO of Coinbase, but probably most well known these days for his book, The Network State, that he put out last year, which is this concept of decentralized cloud-first states. So you sort of create a new polity in the cloud, and then you crowdsource land around that, and you build this all up off a consensus blockchain. And so what he did in his book I really liked was he said, in case you can't be bothered to read the whole thing, here's the book in one sentence, here's the book in one image, and then here's the book in 1,000 words, and then one essay. So I've done that at the beginning, which hopefully makes it quite more accessible. And not to say that AI, ChatGPT, and other models aren't very helpful in summarizing 600 pages down to 10. So the book here is really just saying that you can read it now, but it's really that I think our country's just blind to the rate at which technology is advancing, and that we in order to basically respond to the rate of technological change, we really need a national technology strategy, for want of a better word, and we just collectively invest in that. And then open source is something that we can probably talk about in the Q&A. I think for a small country like ourselves, that we just will not have the scale if we're trying to build everything out of number 8 wire. So we have to collaborate on a global, out at the frontier, but on a global scale, open source. And here it is in one picture. So the pulling up from the technology theme is this concept of the global poly crisis. And everybody I speak to now is just a bit uneasy about how things are at, right? We're having record temperatures around the world, right? We've got forests burning, we've got biodiversity collapse. I'll talk about some of these in a moment. We've just come out of a global pandemic, first global pandemic in a century. We have less social cohesion. We've got misinformation epidemics, and then also a changing geopolitical scenario around the world, right? And so we live in a far more uncertain and volatile era than probably anybody in this room has ever lived in before. Although, folks, my Uber driver this morning was from Afghanistan, was telling me all about his life and how he'd come through. So, we've lived a very sheltered life here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So, part 1 of the book, and this again is some fantastic AI art imagining New Zealand in 2100 with our little cottage farms. So part 1 basically does go into this concept of the poly crisis. And I'll just talk, just a couple of the main points here. So we've got the IPCC models, the UN climate change body, that is basically saying that unless something changes, we're on that red line, right? If we have if we manage to be lucky, then we'll keep everything below 2 degrees Celsius. But what the latest data has come through, and that's from just earlier in 2024, is that the data is within the models, still within the 95th percentile of the models, but is right at the very edge of it. So it may be that the rate of climate change that the IPCC has been modelling is actually far too conservative, right? And so, which is going to have huge implications. Not the main one of which is basically collapsing biodiversity globally. And this is on the left here from a study called "Avoiding a Ghastly Future," which is basically showing the the damage to various different types of environments and biological ecosystems around the world, and that's from the Ministry of the Environment, showing the same thing for New Zealand. And so species extinction is accelerating, and biodiversity loss is as well. And so, for me, this book's been a journey, and coming from this techno-optimist, accelerationist background, where I'm just thinking, well, there's going to be a technology solution to that. And the deeper I've gone into those two particular aspects of the polycrisis in particular, and I came across this work by Bill Reid, who's a Canadian population scientist, and this concept of overshoot, where 8 billion people on the planet. So we've basically gone from a few million people to 8 billion people. And so this is from Goth600, who's like one of the best Twitter accounts out there. But we haven't really quite internalized the fact that we just live in extraordinary times, and we have an economy that's structured with incentivization to maximize profit, to maximize GDP, which is to keep pushing that line up. And basically, let's go from 8 billion to 16 billion, right? But if you actually look at some of this modeling here, then you could model the alternative way of modeling this is that a plague of locusts has eaten the whole field. And so this systems collapse model here, as there's some research in there. So I haven't been able to get that one on the right out of my head. And so I say I just exist in this quantum superposition at the moment between techno-optimism. We're going to solve this. We're all going to become augmented AI, human AI cyborgs, versus oh shit. There. So and that probably comes through the book. Is like there's lots of scenarios about the positives and the negatives. One thing that is not unlikely, but the country's not talking about at all, is climate migration. And so this is envisioning 10,000 climate migrants on a cruise ship in a New Zealand harbour. And I think, given some of the scenarios, has anyone read Ministry for the Future by Kim Stanley Robinson? Yeah. So that's a fantastic, probably one of the best treatments of future climate politics, climate change, and how the scenarios might play out. I think this country is going to be climate migration is going to become a major political issue within the next few years, and starting with Australia is probably quite a very likely scenario as well. Continuing with the polycrisis, we have since after the Second World War and Hiroshima and Nagasaki, basically there's been this sort of Pax Americana, where you've had this sort of global hegemon, basically maintaining a global order that's been relatively peaceful, certainly in our region, and that's there's lots of evidence that there's more a multipolar world emerging, and that's just striking us now. There's finally we're actually having a bit of a debate, but do we want to align with one side, or do we want to maintain what we call an independent foreign policy, and what's the realpolitik of that? So in the book, I talk to that, and so if you look at the two black axes here, I'm not very good at drawing, by the way, and I didn't get Sam to do this, redo this one, but you've got classic geopolitics, which would be hegemonic to multipolar, and then US hegemony to China, and that's the sort of like where most of our commentary sits around. But I think what we're seeing with emerging tech is there's a new axis here of technology, large tech, big tech capabilities that are basically able to, they're sort of like cutting across classic geopolitics. And one option there might be a network state scenario, but another option might be the fact that you've got an entire nation running on Amazon or Microsoft data centers, right, and software and the entire stack. And so actually all of the apparatus from which your country runs is actually operated by a meta-national technology organization. So anyway, this has been me for the last 2 years. So.
Without the cigarette.
Yeah. And look, just actually, I've been following this guy, Daniel Schmachtenberger, for a while. But this podcast on the right there came out, I don't know, for about a month ago. And this is a guy that's got the closest model I've come across of what's actually going on. So if you've got 2 hours, then really, if you've got 1 hour, just go and listen to him at Stockholm at the end of last year. We've got this polycrisis, and then he's really interested in what are the generator functions that are actually, causing all of these, really complex but actually intertwined and interacting challenges, and what's actually causing the whole thing. So don't want to put a downer on your day, by the way. Okay, so a big part of part one is exploring that polycrisis, and really just for me, it's been a piece of research of what's actually going on out there, because we've got a mainstream media that's just it's talking about domestic issues, quite a lot of celebrity stuff. There's infinite sport, but we don't really see an enormous amount of coverage of these questions. So the second part of part two is talking about exponential technology, and this was an epiphany for me back in the late 2000s. Somebody handed me a copy of Ray Kurzweil's Singularity is Near, and I sort of devoured it within a week. And this is something that I'd sort of personally intuited, myself, but hadn't sort of done enough research. And here suddenly was someone that had studied this stuff for 30 years and had built, his evidence-based models about the whole thing. So this is a diagram from that book that around about 2040, the compute power in all human brains on the planet will be $1,000 of compute, right? I think we're going to get there by sooner. And that's and so Moore's law is one instance of that law of exponential returns, and this is from Steve Jurvetson, who updated Kurzweil's chart, and just it's continuing, right? So this is a logarithmic scale on the y-axis there. So the book for me is I go into 20 core technologies that I think are advancing on an exponential rate. And this is a sort of approximate plot of them, general purpose to applied and mature to emerging. I won't put too much emphasis on the positioning there. But so this is really what I've been doing with the newsletter for the last 5 years, is just working out the current contemporary developments in every single one of these technologies. And from that, you can sort of extrapolate where it's come from, where it is, and where it's going to. So what I might do now is I'll just talk you through just some of the key, mainly AI, some of the key developments that are just happening around us. So this is my standard AI keynote slide around 5 years of modern AI applications. That we came from so AI has been around since the 1950s. The term, it probably would be easier if someone had just called it applied statistics at the time rather than artificial intelligence. But we are where we are. The 2000s, is probably when modern AI applications, which is really just large data analytics, right? So Amazon started doing, recommendation engines. It's like people that have bought this also bought something else, recommending what you might want to go and see. In the 2010s, we've seen, much more, again, that ability to process much larger, more complex data sets. People are able to tag their friends in Facebook, and that moved straight away to the ability to find all photos with this person with facial recognition. So AI was trundling along, and when we were doing AI Day and AI Forum, we could sort of see that this stuff was advancing, but no one really. And you saw GPT-2 come out from OpenAI, and that was quite nice. I remember doing a doing some presentations with a little demo of someone doing some marketing copy with GPT-2, and it sort of, it looks pretty impressive. And then suddenly, right at the end of 2022, and all of last year, ChatGPT came out, and GPT-4 was released soon after, and then suddenly there's this explosion of generative AI that we're really familiar with, and that's maturing and turning up in all the tools that everybody's using. Copilot within Microsoft Suite. You've got Gemini now within Google Workspace and Adobe and so on. So what's happening right now is we're seeing a similar birth of agentic AI, and so this is where you can string multiple large language or AI, generative AI calls together, and it can basically create long-running workflows. I'll show you some demos of that, but also scientific AI. So really seeing very specific science-based AI models that are accelerating discovery of of new proteins, accelerating the discovery of new ways of doing nuclear fusion, for example. And so I think this year's theme is really going to be agentic AI and advancing engineering and science. What all of the big AI companies are talking about now is artificial general intelligence, AGI, which OpenAI define as the ability to outperform humans at nearly any economically valuable work. And this is now on the horizon of these big tech companies. I don't see this as a conversation that's happening particularly loudly in this country, but I think it's going to be quite profound. So just examples of all of those. This was Midjourney 5, came out about a year ago, and this was a milestone. This is probably the first AI generated model that you couldn't really tell if it was a photo or if it was computer generated, right? Case in point, the Pope in Balenciaga. That's one of my favorites. And yeah, this was me. I was just talking on the radio, RNZ last year. This is a National Party AI generated Reid ad. I think we dodged a bullet last year, actually, because I was really worried about the amount of misinformation that potentially could have happened in an election year. I think the powers that be basically pulled back from using this. I think this year's US election is going to be absolutely mental, and we can. And the point of this is not to win an election or lose an election; it's to create doubt on the result of the election. Yeah, and so this is what this technology enables. This is a demo from a text-to-speech. I can play.
Oh. Hey, James. Yeah, who's it? Hey, James. It's Alexander from Tesla Motors. How's your day going so far?
It's going pretty good, my man. How about yourself? You said you're Tesla, right? The car company?
Yeah, that's right. I'm calling from Tesla Motors, the car company. Did you have any trouble or questions while customizing your car on our website?
No, we're just.
We'll just stop that. Yeah. So. Just.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Yeah. So that's AI. Sounds like Louis Theroux. Hello, hilariously. But of all the amazing things you could use the technology for, a sort of cold customer support call, wouldn't be my first thing. But so now when you pick the phone up, you've got no idea what's on the other end, or who. And then so we've gone from text to text, text to image, to text to voice, and then this is a demo from OpenAI's Sora model. So this isn't generally available now, but this is basically just a prompt saying a video of a flower tiger with some text, and then it creates this sort of high resolution video. So it's not absolutely perfect, a little bit hallucinogenic, but you can see that this is going that way where we're heading to a near future where all content is going to be AI generated and streamed in real time and probably personalized. This is me.
In the near future, when automatic language translation becomes seamlessly integrated into our daily lives, New Zealand's tourism industry could experience significant transformation. Dans un futur proche, lorsque la traduction automatique des langues sera intégrée de manière transparente dans notre quotidien, l'industrie du tourisme en Nouvelle-Zélande pourrait connaître une transformation significative。在不久的将来，当自动语言翻译无缝集成到我们的日常生活中时，新西兰的旅游也可能会经历重大的变革。你猜一出来？
So that's me. Literally, probably took about 2 minutes to record 30 seconds of video of me, and you can see it was such a rough video. There's actually my angle poise lamp up at the top right there, and it got all my facial gestures and hand gestures. And then I just went to ChatGPT and says, write me a 2-sentence script on AI use for translation in the tourism industry, and then translate that into 5 languages. And then I pasted that into HeyGen, and then that came out. So again, amazing uses. So if you're basically operating in any non-English speaking market, you're there already. However, this has got quite, for every technology, there's positive use cases and then what we might consider negative use cases. So this company called Arcads is now using the same kind of technology to create AI actors. And so, there's this term limbic hijacking, where you're trying to create an emotional response in your audience and get them to react in a certain way. This is the whole of your TikTok, Instagram feeds are going to be full of this year.
So let me get this straight. You guys are telling me that when you're out of the house for hours, you're comfortable walking around with all that stanky body odor that's been building up on you all day? What's even crazier is that some of you are applying deodorant on top of that odor, which is honestly probably making it worse.
And so, how do we protect against this, right? You can't detect that that's not a real person. It's really hard to do it. And so, how are young people, coming up going to basically, filter this out of their feeds?
Just thinking of that script.
Yeah. But then you just type that script in, right? And it just does the emotional side of it. Yeah. Sorry? To wash? Maybe. When they listen to me, I don't know. This is I think my favorite picture from the book. Have we got the prompts down there? No, I didn't put the prompt in. But this is like a cyborg and nature. So I think that's a beautiful photo. Or AI generated image, sorry, with a Coromako. But yeah, this is leading into just about what's happening with robotics. So you've got Tesla's Optimus robot now, which is within a year they've gone from like next to nothing to this, and this is AI is being used to accelerate the development of faster AI, faster robotics, faster science, and so that's an incredible feat. And then this is the same. This is like 2 months later. They've, so it's still got looks a bit arthritic, but this is going to be pretty commonplace. And then I don't know if you saw this 2 weeks ago.
In figure 1, what do you see right now?
I see a red apple on a plate in the center of the table, a drying rack with cups and a plate, and you standing nearby with your hand on the table.
Great. Can I have something to eat?
Oh, did I press something?
Sure thing.
Great. Can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
On it. So I gave you the apple because it's the only edible item I could provide you with from the table.
So that's basically figure animated with GPT-4, and did you pick up I gave you the apple. They've got the little conversational text in there to just make it even more natural. If you go and look at there's hundreds of companies, there's like tens of companies out there doing it. There's Figure, Tesla. I can't remember the name of those two at the top. That one's crazy. That's Westworld on the right there. It's just like completely natural muscles. And then NVIDIA's Jensen Huang was on stage with like all of these robots that are running off their new chip for humanoid robots, right? So fundamentally, the future we're heading into, and this is Elon Musk at the Tesla shareholders meeting last year, is that the majority of long-term value of Tesla is Optimus, and everybody's going to want at least one. And so, 10 billion units, 20 billion units, everybody's going to have a robot at home is the vision he's selling. Just don't talk about energy consumption requirements there. But I think, so basically if I was an investor in rest homes right now, that would be quite significant for me, because I think people are going to be able to look after themselves for a lot longer in the future life. I'm running out of time, so basically just AI is accelerating science. This is a chemistry lab that basically is just running experiments 24/7, completely automated. AlphaFold is just an amazing piece of work by DeepMind, which is sort of Google DeepMind now is Google's AI lab, and it's solved this problem of being able to predict how proteins fold in the genome. And so this is really accelerating biotech, genetic tech applications and for health. And then just recently, as I was saying, AI is being used to actually model plasma in a fusion reactor. And so, this is, again, these are problems that just weren't possible to solve previously, and now they're just falling like dominoes every day. So if you're getting a sense that this is speeding up, you're right. If you have a belief this is going to slow down, I'm not sure it's going to. Meanwhile, back in New Zealand, so I just took a photo of that when I saw it. But also here in New Zealand, we're a bit fragile right now, and my sense is that technologies, those polycrisis theme, but technology is part of this discussion around the fact that there's things that, and I'm not going to get political, but there's things that are happening right now that people didn't necessarily see coming along. And so this brings me on to part two. So part one is all about laying out the landscape. Part two is really just imagining how we might address some of these challenges. That's one of my other favorites up there. So I'd quite like to live there, a hillside city in the future of New Zealand. So I'm pretty brutal. I've got some spicy takes in the book, and I think we live in a country that spends a lot of time looking backwards. And part of that is we've got a king that lives in a country on the other side of the world. We've got an imported British political system. We've got a 140-year-old, 160-year-old, 80-year-old treaty that is still disputed, and and with no resolution in sight in the future. And so so going back to my slide about the previous government, the decisions, politics there, this is legacy technology, right? If this is Windows 3 that we are operating our democracy on, all right? And our economy is the same, right? We export protein and concentrated milk and forest and fruit and wood and fruit, and we import petroleum and technology, right? And so in terms of our ability to live the lifestyles and that we're used to, the concept of being able to export shipping containers of dairy powder and then bring in shipping containers full of iPhones, right? It's like there's just orders of magnitude of value between those, and it's that value differential is getting bigger. And we tell ourselves this sort of myth about number 8 wire, but I just don't think that it's we just have no all of the technology that we're consuming is made by mostly West Coast US software companies or Chinese hardware companies. We make very little of and export very little technology. And I would say that the people in the room, I'm pretty converted, because everyone, a lot of people in the room are in the tech sector here and are exporting amazing tech. So this isn't me to chop it down, but just as a proportion of our overall economy, tech and innovation is a small part. And so, so as I was coming towards the end of the book, Judith basically canned Te Aotearoa, which was the complete restructure of the research and science and innovation sector, and canned the Digital Technologies Industry Transformation Plan from May 2023 last year, which said AI is a future area of interest. So the book really for me is, I think the country, we're fundamentally missing a technology strategy, right? So along the top there is what previously was assumed to happen, is that we fund, and there's a lot of mission-led research, science and innovation in the universities and the CRIs that was aiming for this commercialization outcome, which then delivers investor returns. And then there's a sort of dotted line, and then mission outcomes will happen. But if I was being uncharitable, then I just think that's then a miracle occurs. Is this thinking? It's miraculous thinking, and so we have no mechanism to turn the fundamental research and science that we're doing into technology which delivers outcomes. And so for me, that's really what the book's about. It's like, how do we fill that gap? And in one picture, that's the theory. And I won't go into too much detail, but I talk about a national technology investment portfolio, right? And so this is really lined up to addressing some of those poly-crisis challenges, but also lining up what are the missions that we want to achieve. Because right now, commercialization is pretty much it, right? So we're operating in this sort of decentralized incentive system where everybody wants to make a profit, everyone wants to maximize GDP, but at the same time, the planet's burning and all the life's dying, and there's wars happening, and and so it just feels to me, and this is part of that meta-crisis conversation, that the alignment of some of the technologies that we're developing here is purely towards GDP, and not towards some of the bigger challenges that are front and center right now. So Aotearoa needs a technology strategy which is aligned towards maximizing a broader definition of well-being, not just profits and GDP growth. One of the other things is supports sovereignty and resilience, right? So we had the earthquakes in Hawke's Bay last year, and people couldn't pay down in the supermarket because there was no internet, right? Because the cables have been cut. And so they had someone from the Ministry of Civil Defence, I think it was, or something, had to go down to Harvey Norman and buy some Starlink dishes and take them up to Hawke's Bay in a helicopter. Okay, so if the small number of fibre cables into this country were cut, will the country continue to operate? Is a question. I don't know if anybody, I don't know if there is an answer to that. I'm assuming that the intelligence agencies have an idea, but how many people have got stuff in Azure in Sydney or in the US, right, or AWS? How much of that is will fall back on shore? So I think in terms of a national continuity strategy, we're missing a few things there. And then this is the piece here about frontier technological capability. So all those robots, all that AI that I was showing you, it's all happening in Silicon Valley, right? And California and up the coast, up in Washington State. How do we contribute and build capability to operate at that frontier level, or are we just going to continue to just pay our $20 a month subscription, and we'll just take that and and here's some more dairy powder. And so my solution to that is we need to build significant capability and collaborate with every other country in the world that's in our same position to build an open source decentralized alternative to big US tech and big China tech. And I'm not saying that those are inherently bad. It's just that having a total dependency as a technology taker it basically means that the country loses agency. And so the book finishes on a high, on a positive note, with a techno-optimist manifesto of, and this is a portfolio. So the portfolio structure, this is a lot of innovation strategy work I do, is we'll basically ideate and then we'll sort of narrow down to a portfolio of investments across traditionally 3 horizons, and then what's the risk and slash uncertainty or certainly uncertainty slash risk on the vertical axis. And then for the book, I've talked about Horizon X, which is much more of those existential catastrophic risks, which may be war, it may be earthquakes, it may be asteroids hitting, it may be pandemics. But what can we invest in there? And most of that, to be honest, is basically a foresight capability on shore that makes us prepared for if the shit hits the fan, then we've actually done the thinking before, and we've got a process to run through. I think economically, we have a big question to ask: is that most of our export economy in terms of products is down here at the bottom layer, right? We turn grass and cows into milk. We grow trees and take the fruit off them. We bash pieces of wood together and build houses. If you've seen the Tesla Gigafactory video, where it's just totally automated, massive not a human in sight, as the drone flies through the factory. Do we want to, whereabouts in this complexity chain do we want to strategically play, right? Do we want to make the machines, or the machines that make the machines, or the machines that make the machines that make the machines, and so on? And so I think that would be, for me, this is there's greater value for a country that is very far away in terms of our connectivity to global supply chains in miniaturizing the physical products that we make, and or making them completely weightless, and reducing the weight that they take. So how do we create more complexity and value per kilogram and or cubic meter that we export? And so this is the technology portfolio. It's a starter for 100, and it obviously reflects my political biases in there as well. So there's a whole bunch of material about how we would crowdsource the prioritization of this. And Audrey Tang, who's the digital minister in Taiwan, has done a lot of work about how you create more participatory democratic systems to involve a lot more people in prioritizing political objectives. But for me, those would be 10 missions that I think would be worth investing in for Aotearoa. And then for each of those, I've basically marked out a total of about 100 technology solutions. There's a lot of digital twins in there, so I think we need digital twins of the country, data models of what's going on in the country in order to have situational awareness. And also we could use AI. Nice simple application we use right now is just a digital twin of all the wilding conifers on the planet, in the country, so that you can then actually logistically save the cost and be more effective at keeping wilding pines under control. And I won't go through all of these, and it's a complete eye chart. So regenerative economy, longer, healthier lives. One of the pieces here as well is that home care with robots. It's like, why aren't we investing in that right now? Could we not be one of the first countries in the world that is able to look after its old people and give them autonomy and independence well into their later life? Okay, and then just finally finishing up. That's nice, Ben. What an idealist, but it's a bit detached from reality. And so that's probably a question for the Q&A. But I have some thoughts about how, given the fact that there used to be an $80 million a year RSI budget for mission-led research, I think that some of that budget can be reallocated to technology as opposed to just research, which becomes an academic paper but doesn't really go much further. And then, I like the thought of, basically people can just, do this, take a sabbatical, maybe 1 or 2 days a week from the day job, and and actually develop open source AI, open source technology, open source robotics, build that capability onshore, and focus on some of those outcomes that we're talking about. That's great. Oh, well, 40 minutes. Thank you very much for listening, and thanks for inviting me, Justin. So, as I said, the digital release is available, and there's $10 off per copy if you use AI Show 10 off as a discount code, and aiming to be shipping at the end of this month. So, thank you.